Welcome back to Teacher to Teacher. If you're new, for the past 3 weeks, we've been meeting every Tuesday and Thursday to discuss different aspects related to teaching and learning online. You can watch the episodes you missed and download the handout for each of the episodes on the Macmillan website. In any case, today is episode 6 and we'll be talking about evaluating online. Personally, I find evaluation is one of the hardest aspects of teaching and learning. And a lot of my colleagues also agree. Especially this year, when most of us, both students and teachers, are finding ourselves in completely new territory as we're asked to carry out evaluations online. In the last episode, we're talking about feedback, which is actually key to help students to progress in their learning, especially now that we're not around at school for our students to come and talk to us. Feedback is already a way of assessing students' work, as not everything needs to carry a mark. As you all know, assessing and giving a mark is definitely not the same. But we as teachers are asked to give marks, and that's why in today's episode, I'm going to share with you the 3 tools that I'm currently using to make evaluation easier, both for my students and for myself in this new setup. The 3 tools that I'm going to talk about are Google Forms, Google Classroom Rubrics, and Co-Rubrics. The first one is basically to design tasks and tests. And the other 2 are for creating rubrics, which I think are especially useful in this current situation we're in, because a lot of the students are more anxious and are a lot more lost in this new setup, and they really appreciate having clear expectations and a clear set of criteria to refer to. So let us look at the tools one by one. Okay, so let's start with tool number 1, which is Google Forms. You'll probably already be familiar with Google Forms, which is an app belonging to the Google Drive Office suite, which enables you to create quizzes and questionnaires, including different types of media, like images, audio, video, which makes them a bit more interesting for students. In terms of evaluation, the best thing about Google Forms is that the quizzes and questionnaires you create are self-correctable, meaning that the students get instant feedback on their answers and you don't have to mark the quizzes one by one. And let's face it, time, or rather the lack of it, was already an issue for teachers when we were teaching face-to-face. But right now, more than ever, we need to make things as efficient as possible because we don't want to add to our already really heavy workload. So in any case, how can you get started with Google Forms? Well, it's really easy. You just need to sign up with your Gmail account, go to Google Drive, then click on send new Google Forms, and you're ready to go. There are quite a few types of questions that you can choose from. There's multiple choice, there are check boxes, drop-down menu, short answers, and then you can also assign points to each of the questions. But the best thing is that you can add feedback to each of the answers. And this is, I think, what makes this quizzes more useful in terms of learning from the student's point of view. So for example, when I'm designing reading tasks on Google Forms, apart from the correct answer, I always include the part of the text where the answer can be found. Because when I was teaching face-to-face, I used to ask students to underline where they had found the answer, so they justified their actual answers. And so I think this is also useful for the students in the current situation as well. Also, when I create listening tasks, again, apart from including the correct answer, I include the part of the script where the answer can be found. And I feel students really appreciate this. And finally, when I use Google Forms for vocabulary work, for language work, I include not only the correct answer, but the definition or an explanation of each of the words that appear in each question. So students don't only know if their answer is right or wrong, but also why. And this is linked to giving justified, well-reasoned feedback that we were talking about in the previous episode. Also with vocabulary exercises, I sometimes include reminders or tips based on the student's most typical mistakes. For example, I would say, remember that mustn't is spelled with a silent T, because students often have problems with this word. So I think this is really useful for them to actually remember a little bit as if you were telling them in person if you were there. Okay, so apart from looking at the students' individual answers, Google Forms also allows you to look at the students' most common mistakes from the summary section. And I feel this is especially useful to be able to go over them again, maybe in the online sessions you have with them. And this is exactly what I do with my ESO and Bachillerato students, because at the beginning of each class, after the warm-up, I project the questions from the previous week that they had the most trouble with, and we look at them again, we try to answer them again to see what each of the mistakes were, and then I give them a chance to ask any questions they might still have. Finally, if you combine Google Forms with the Chrome add-on Form Limiter, you can create time quizzes where the students have a limited range of time to do them. This is especially useful in years where students are actually taking exams online. And I found this great tutorial by Richard Byrne, which tells you how to create time quizzes combining these two tools. I've included the tutorial in the handout, and I've also included his Twitter account for you to check out. If you don't know Richard Byrne, he's a teacher and teacher trainer from Maine in the USA, and he's also got a blog and a website where you'll find loads of ideas on tools that you can use to improve your online teaching. Plus, if you sign up for his website, you'll get his ideas delivered straight into your inbox. But anyway, this was Google Forms and Form Limiter for you. I hope you find them useful. Okay, so moving on to tool number 2. The second tool I use to evaluate my students' work online is Google Classroom Rubrics. I'm actually a big fan of rubrics because I think they really help students to understand what they're expected to do, which actually improves their performance. Rubrics also give you a clear picture of what the criteria are that you're going to be evaluated with, and I think this really motivates students to do their best. So how can you create rubrics on Google Classroom? Well, it's really quick. When you design an assignment for your students, you can also add a rubric. You can decide what items you're going to evaluate, what criteria you're going to use to evaluate each of the items, and how many levels of performance you would like to have. So for example, say you decide to have 3 levels of performance, excellent, fair, and needs improvement, or whatever label it is that you want to use, obviously. What you can do is include a description of each of the levels so students know what they're expected to do in each of them and can actually aspire to get to the highest level, which is usually the one that comes first. Apart from creating your own rubric, you can also use pre-existing ones and edit them, which is really practical. And you can also import rubrics from Google Sheets or export the new ones you create so you can use them later. Finally, you can also share rubrics with your colleagues so you don't need to create them from scratch every time. So with all these options, designing rubrics has never been easier. In the handout, I've included a range of tutorials and step-by-step instructions that I used when I started out, and which you can download on the Macmillan website if you need more information. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, so last but not least, here's tool number 3. And the last tool I wanted to tell you about is called Co-Rubrics. It's an add-on for Google Sheets that enables you to create rubrics to assess your students' work and also to get students to self-assess themselves and co-assess their peers. It was created by Jaume Feliu, a technology teacher in St. Quirze and a Google for Education certified trainer. A friend of mine, actually the maths teacher that I mentioned last week, showed me this tool long ago. And I must admit at the beginning, I was a bit skeptical because it looked very complicated. But then he showed me how to use it step by step. And I was totally convinced. So from then on, Co-Rubrics has become one of my favorite tools to assess students' work. The first time you use it, it does take a bit longer to set up because you need to download the add-on, create the Co-Rubrics template, import your students from Google Classroom. But then after that, I can assure you, it's piece of cake. So in the handout, I've included quite a few tutorials that you can watch to follow each of the steps. And Jaume, the creator of the tool, does a great job taking you through the process bit by bit, so it's impossible not to get it right. In any case, how can Co-Rubrics help you with evaluation? Well, like I said before, it makes assessing students' work a lot more efficient, and it also gets students to be more aware of their performance and their peers' performance because they can co-assess their peers and assess themselves. Co-assess, that's why it's called Co-Rubrics, right? In any case, how does this work? Well, I've used Co-Rubrics with students quite a few times now, and they're always amazed at how user-friendly it is. Basically, all you need to do is send your students the link to the form you've created with a rubric. They need to type in their email address as a way of identifying themselves, and then choose who they're assessing, either themselves or a peer. Then they need to choose one of the options for each of the criteria that you've previously established in the rubric, and when they're done, they just hit send. So their choice is automatically recorded, and all the feedback is kept together. So once everyone, all the students and yourself, have filled in the form, all the answers are processed, and you just need to click on Process Form Responses for the mark to be automatically calculated using the percentages you've established in the rubric beforehand. Ta-da! It's like magic. So after this, what you can do is you can effortlessly send the students the mark as a graph, including everyone's comments, and students, I can tell you, are mind blown, because I mean, it really feels like it's a magic thing. And so this is great to get everyone's feedback in a very easy way. And you'll see, if you watch the tutorials and you try it out, once you get the hang of it, you'll be completely addicted to Co-Rubrics. In any case, that was the end of today's episode. And so, as usual, I hope you can put these ideas into practice to improve your online teaching. And see you next Tuesday for the last episode of Teacher to Teacher. Bye for now.